You're watching Nigeria Decides on Plus TV Africa. We'll be looking at Godfatherism. In the current Nigerian setting since 1999, a godfather is one who, by virtue of either immense wealth or political goodwill, is able to determine not only the persons that are nominated by their parties to contest elections, but who in most cases are believed to be able to guarantee the victory of such candidates. Many politicians will do anything to gain the favor of political godfathers. Joining us in the studio to talk about this issue is Bisi Ogunsanya, Adebisi Ogunsanya. She is the Lagos gubernatorial candidate of YPP. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We also have Olumide Jones. He is a senatorial candidate with ANRP. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you. Let's start with some theories that have been propounded over the years. In fact, they have traced the antecedents of Godfatherism all the way to the First Republic, when we had the Ziks of this world and the Tafawa Balewas of this world. And, you know, we hear that they wielded an enormous power, and that's where it all started. But then, of course, some people have also said that the stronghold of Godfatherism in today's politics is making mockery and futile. You know, the things, what young people, young politicians who have, you know, good conscience and who have great ideas, you know, to change or move forward the economy of this country, it's making a mess of it. How true is that? I'll start with you, because you're running for a Senate. Of course, some people would say, why are we not making laws to, you know, somewhat make this look like it shouldn't be criminal? We should be criminalizing Godfatherism, handpicking people to run. But how easy will that be?
I think the issue we have is when we had the Not Too Young bill being proposed, a lot of homework was not done regarding the rules of INEC. As a senatorial candidate, INEC stipulates that I can only spend up to 40 million naira to contest. How many Nigerians can afford 40 million naira? That is the first question. So when they came up with the issue of not too young to run, nobody bothered looking at the money side of it. And that was done deliberately because the godfathers saw an avenue to say, okay, yes, we'll give them the not too young bill, but at the end of the day, they're going to need money to run. You know, in my case, I have 6 senatorial districts. You know, I have an average of, we're talking 300,000 people to talk to. You know, I mean, voters to say. That means you have to set up secretariats, you need postals, you need bills, you need campaign cars. That costs more than 40 million in reality. And that's the issue. If the money side of it can be fixed, then the issue of Godfatherism won't be there.
But then, I'm so sorry, but then if you're saying to fill that gap, you need money, then it means we're going to monetize the system, and that's going to be a problem. But if you say, take out the money part, there's still some people who have influence, might not necessarily be monetary, but because of their pedigree, they can still say, well, I've anointed you. You're going to be governor. You're going to be senator. It doesn't matter, because every other person in this system is loyal to me. So the question of loyalty comes in, whether there's money or not.
Well, when you talk in terms of pedigree, what people fail to realize is that so-called elite make sure people don't go to school anymore. If you visit the schools, they make sure the average Nigerian child is an illiterate or a half-baked graduate. In such a way that their kids go to Oxford, Cambridge, and God knows where, and they come back to become CEOs, whereas the average Nigerian child has no future. So it always comes down to money. That's the bottom line. Your dollar, your kobo, that's the bottom line.
I actually have a question on the funding part of it. If it is possible for us to, you know, practice politics in Nigeria without this huge amount of money that we expend. But before I come to you, let's bring in the gubernatorial candidate. Ma'am, in your opinion, is Godfatherism that much of a bad thing? Is there a way it can be made into a good thing if we can, you know, use it the way our forefathers originally initiated it to be? Or do you see a society where politics can be practiced in Nigeria without the Godfatherism syndrome?
Well, thank you for your question. As things are now in Nigeria, Godfatherism has taken the center stage in our political life, and it is nothing but the ability of some few to use the government machinery to oppress others and to take it off
it has so generated so much power, it has been so much entrenched in our system that it would take an equal proportion of enlightened people. It's like a movement of people to be able to eradicate Godfatherism.
Is it possible to eradicate? That's the big question here.
It is possible.
How?
It is possible. When people of like minds come together, when the society is enlightened, when people are exposed to the effect of Godfatherism, which is what we are experiencing now. Sporadic problems all over the places. Godfathers can send people out, to create problems, especially in this electioneering period. And people who are not on their side are vehemently oppressed, suppressed. I mean, you put up your posters, they send them out to go and paste other posters. They cover your faces all over the places.
But they could also come out and say that these are allegations, spurious allegations that, have no bearing and you cannot attach or connect to them. That they would tell you that they're high-standing members of society. Why would they be paying thugs to do that? So that remains an allegation and a rumor of sorts that is baseless, according to them.
Well, they will say that, but these are facts. I mean, nobody at this level will come out and start telling stories or tales.
Well, okay, go ahead. Let me know.
The fact remains that the elitists who have seized power, sort of, because there's no democracy per se. Democracy is not being felt by the grassroots. The people who have seized power and, place themselves in position of godfather, to others, are the ones now dictating the tune of who has to be in position, who has to contest for elections. But for this opening of allowing new parties to come in, people like us, our faces may never be seen, no matter how laudable the ideas that are in us are, no matter how intelligent.
That brings me to this question. If you say your parties may not be seen, have you thought about the possibility? I asked this question when we had a discussion on big parties, small parties, and somebody said, no, we shouldn't call them small parties, we should call them young parties. Now, what is the possibility as a way to checkmate Godfatherism for all the small or young parties, so to speak, pull their resources together and kind of find mentorship, not Godfatherism in the term, the way it is used in Nigeria today, mentorship that will allow you to bring out your policies in such a way that people can listen, and not only listen, but pay attention to what you're saying?
Well, talking about mentorship, well, not too young to run people. They don't even know where to turn to. The system is so monetized. The process is so capital intensive that, you need to be determined or have some people who wanted change, and serious change. Not in terms of Godfatherism, because the Godfather will give you the terms and he will dictate what is expected of you. And if you don't meet up, of course, you are going to be chopped aside.
Now, I'm talking about parties coming together.
Yes, the possibilities of parties fusing together, which is like minds, cannot be rubbed off totally. I mean, people are beginning to look in that regard. Because with all the parties scattered, and the godfathers there haven't got the opportunities in the government at their whims and caprices that they use to oppress the new parties. The coming together of new parties is not something out of place. It's something that I'm sure might happen.
Okay. Some critics, this question is for you, Mr. Olumide. Some critics have blamed the lack of true development by political parties in Nigeria on lack of internal democracy, often symbolized by Godfatherism. Is this true?
It is very true.
And why do we allow it to keep going on?
It comes back to the issue of money again. I'll give you a typical example. I'm from Ogun State. I'm running against a sitting governor. And the idea was, if you want to contest, if you want to go into primaries, they'd ask you to pay 5 billion to get the form. How many people?
What did you say? 5 billion?
5 million. 5
million. I was scared. I thought I heard a billion.
5 million. How many people? And what they've done is they've broken it into two phases.
Okay.
They call one expression of interest. They make you pay. then the actual form itself, they make you pay again. By the time you've spent 5 million collecting the forms, where do you start from? You need cars. I'll give you a typical scenario in my own case. You have 6 local governments. Let's assume on the average you put in 6 cars out at 4 million each. That's 24 million already. By the time you put the posters out, you're going to get people to, paste it. You're going to have to get a secretariat. You've gone through another 20 million.
So that takes us back to that question I said I was going to bring to you. Is it possible for us to have a scenario in Nigeria where money is not such a key factor in our elections? Is it ever possible? Is it something that maybe can be enacted into law, inserted in INEC's act or electoral act, or as part of their responsibility, so as to take away that part, maybe that aspect of Godfatherism, so to say?
It is possible. I remember very well in 1979 when the Shagari administration was coming in. All the parties they had then, the UPNs and the MPNs of this world, all you needed to do was to register a party, and the government gave you a grant. They created an equal playing field. That has been reversed. Now you have to raise the money, you have to set up the party, you have to spend all the money. And that's where the problem is.
But could it also be that times have changed? I mean, in different climes, in other climes rather, people go to people who appreciate the ideologies they're selling, or, whatever it is that the cause that they're pushing for, to get funding. They open up the funding and say, hey, let's say the Meat Sellers Association, the Market Women Association, or the Wheelbarrow Pushers Association, who believe in my cause, come, put your money here and, support my party. Do you necessarily have to wait for grant? I mean, government has a lot on its plate already. Should government be doing that in today's world?
That is what they make you believe. They create this scenario that they can't fix Nigeria. Nigeria costs too much money, but yet they waste money on things that are silly. The reality is, in 1979, like I was saying, let's assume everybody was granted 1 billion each. And they say, okay, if your party, because that was why they came up with the law, that if you want to contest for presidential seats, you need to not spend more than 1 billion. In Nigeria, present-day Nigeria, 1 billion is nothing. And that's the problem we have. If we go back to where we used to be and say, okay, for every party that is registered, we will give you a particular subvention. What you're saying about people coming together...
Well, sorry to interrupt. Wouldn't that cause even more proliferation of parties?
Because every party would want to come for 1 billion.
Everybody would want to come in and get,
and we'll have more than 91 that we have already.
There will be conditions. Even the 91 we have, they had to go through processes. My party is a new party. We have to go through the process. It's a question of you doing your homework. If the rules are there, people are not playing by the rules because the rules are not there. If you create the rules, create the enabling environment, it's just like running a business on SME. You go to a bank, they'll give you rules. These are the 10 rules you need to meet, and we'll give you whatever money you need. Parties are the same. ANRP was being sponsored by every member of the party. We created a forum that's never been done in Nigeria before, where you have to pay subscription, a yearly subscription. Just like they do, if it's a conservative
But can that
party.
money suffice? Is it even anywhere close to what you need to run your... I mean, because you don't have just one candidate on that party. You have those who are going to be running for governorships, senatorial districts, local government chairman. Is that money anything close to what you need?
That is the whole point. Like in my state, for example, I am the only one out of the 3 senatorial districts contested. And the idea is to bring like minds to say, look, okay, guys, we're coming together. We need to start a change. We don't want to queue up with the old cargo, sorry to use the word. We need to change Nigeria from somewhere. And you got to put your money where your mouth is. And that's how we started. We don't have a lot of money, but we're doing what we need to do.
I'll come back to you again, ma'am. Is it possible for us to have politics without Godfatherism? You said yes. How?
The level playing ground has to be same.
Whose responsibility would that be?
Well, it will be the responsibility of the government. They set up the Independent Electoral Commission.
Okay.
Yeah, they fund it.
And then they fund politics. They need to see that competent, efficient people are brought out by each party.
Won't there be any bias, being that they ran on a platform, and that platform now becomes the ruling party? How do you make sure that there's no bias across boards and there's no favoritism? In other words, more people, some party doesn't get more than the other.
We're still talking the same thing. Any bias, any flair for any individual will have been from a Godfather point of view. If we remove Godfather and put a level playing ground, of course we will get the best of the people who have the interest of the people. The salary of people in politics does not have to be as high as it is.
To make the office unattractive.
Yes, let people who are interested in seeing to the betterment of the citizen, people who actually have the love of the country at heart and the growth of the country and, you know, the generations to come at heart, you know, people who are actually out to serve, let them be given the positions. It is not people who are using government, you know, money, government paraphernalias to enrich themselves. And they have such an insatiable appetite. They don't even want to leave the positions. It has now become a family hereditament. I mean, there's something wrong going on here. And the larger community, the larger populace are getting poorer and poorer, and they are getting rich. And they don't seem to think there is an end.
But if you're talking about
the distance is getting widening on a daily basis.
But if you're talking about greed and then, you know, people holding on to power, some people would also point to the little, I'm sorry to use the word, mushroom political parties that are coming up every day as also being greedy, because there are other parties that you could align with. You could join other parties whose causes might be somewhat similar. We have 91. If we can all align and say, okay, this is what I believe, this is what you believe, let's work together and bring that to fruition instead of, you know, duplicating yourselves. Again, some people would also say, we're part of the problem. These people, we who sit on the other side and point fingers, those politicians come from our stock, they're from our families, they're from our communities. If we do not demand accountability from them, they keep getting away with these things over and over again. So should we not also be looking in the mirror and saying, well, we're also part of the problem?
Until there is an intent to come out and serve, you will not know the manifesto of parties. And it is when the intent has been made open and you see like minds rubbing together that you can align. I hope I'm making it clear. But if you stay under the existing parties, they don't even practice what they say. And at any rate, when they see that you are independently minded and you are not the kind that they could subjugate to their whims and caprices, when they sneeze, you catch cold, you will never smell the position.
What would you do differently if you become, I know this is not a deviation, it's still within the premise of what we're saying,
yes,
because we've had a few debates, governorship debates in these states with other candidates as well,
yes,
and to a large extent we have an idea what their agenda is. What is your agenda? What do you intend to do, maybe a little differently from what all these other candidates have in mind?
Well, principally my coming to politics this time around is to restructure the existing system, because this foundation is not totally evil, it cannot sustain us. And by my attitude, by the parts I will play, I want to be seen for what I want to do, that is mentoring the upcoming Nigerians to know how to do things right. Because the few young people that has gone underneath the armpit of these people, you see them tell lies like, you know, they're licking sweets. And they think it's a way of life. And it's making things more difficult.
I think we should throw the same question to you, because you're talking about doing things differently, light minds, ideas, old cargo. But in all of these manifestos we keep seeing, it's almost the same thing running through all of them. What is your own plan? Is there something different that, you know, that has not been done before in your constituents?
Totally. One of the major things we are looking at, I personally, is what we call data analytics. The first problem you have in most states is governors come into place. They don't even know how many students they have. They don't know how many schools they have. They don't know how many kids were born. They don't know how many people died. How do you plan for that population?
That's right.
And you get them saying, oh, the budget for this year is going to be 600 billion. How did you arrive at 600 billion? Oh, we have about 30 million people in so place. How did you know? Can you break the 30 million people down? You know, can you tell me how many people are under 45? How many people are going to be 65? How many people are going to be retiring? How many retirement homes do you need? The data is just not there. And that is the basics. You cannot, no matter how much money you throw at it, if you don't have the basic data for you to work with, it will never work. We keep doing the same thing round and round, and we've been doing it for 58 years. Nothing has changed.
But you're going to be in the Senate, which is mostly lawmaking. You're passing bills, you're raising issues.
Did you hear what you just said? That is a misconception.
Just hold on. You're not obviously a governor who is sovereign somewhat. You work within the ambit of the law that governs the National Assembly.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going. How do you intend, because lots of people have come up with interesting ideas as to what they want to see change within the National Assembly, and when they go there, they just align. And then when they come home to the constituents, they speak the big grammars, and then they go back there. How do you intend to single yourself out? What bills would you want to support, sponsor, lobby for, or against? And let us know that, sincerely, you're not going to be one of the others.
Okay. What I'll say to that is very simple. A lot of people, like you said, we have this mentality because the politicians say it all over the TV every time. Our job is just lawmaking. It's a bloody lie. Their job is not just lawmaking. There's nothing wrong you bringing an NGO into your community to do the things you want to do. You don't have to wait for government money. In Ogunsanya, for example, when I go to campaign, I tell people, I use the Freedom of Information Act to find out what they get. They get a constituency allowance of 550 million a year. In 4 years, it's 2.3 billion naira, and there's nothing on ground to show for it. I've not been elected. I have 6 offices in all the 6 local governments. I run an empowerment program. And how did I arrive at that? We went round and I looked at the states. This is Ogun State. What do people do apart from civil service? People are traders. Okay, let's take a stock of those traders across the 6 local governments. How much is their investment?
Okay, you're basically telling us that you're going to focus on using the right data to solve the problems as you encounter them.
Very straightforward.
Okay, before we move on with this conversation, I want to create 2 scenarios.
Sure.
One, I probably will not mention the state, but I'll give you a background. You will know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
In one state, the alleged godfather has moved to another party.
Okay. Yeah.
And the incumbent is now having a running battle.
Yes.
Previously, in another setting, we had another state where the alleged godfather attempted to overshadow the incumbent, who was his son when he came in, but that one was firm enough to outshine him. Let's just basically say, allegedly, Akwa Ibom and Anambra State. These are stories of Godfatherism, but one was able to surmount. Is it possible in the Nigerian scenario, we always say that go to the, take the politicians' money, but vote your conscience. Is it possible, since the Godfather syndrome is still there, that we can find a way to use them, but still, at the end of the day, achieve our individual purpose just the way you've put out now?
I don't think you really need godfathers. And that was one of the reasons why I went to a fresh new party. The idea is you tell people, it might take us time.
But this scenario is not something that played out before. In Akwa Ibom, we know that there are certain political intrigues going on there that's just clear of what this Godfatherism issue is all about when one falls out and the other comes in. So how would you react to that? You're saying you don't need godfathers?
In an ideal world, you don't need godfathers. The problem
Are we in an ideal world? Is this an ideal situation?
Nigeria is not an ideal world. That's why we're having the discussion.
Just so we're clear.
Because if it was, we wouldn't be having the discussion. But the idea is you need to let people know
and still
they need to think differently. When I go out to campaign, I'll give you a typical scenario. This morning, one of my branded campaign vehicles was smashed. And why? I had a coalition meeting with some parties just yesterday, and we had to leave in a convoy. And some people noticed that there were 2 parties driving in a convoy together. And within 12 hours, I had my car smashed. That is kind of politics we play. But that doesn't deter us. We are still telling the people, look, people know what the right thing to do, but a lot of people are too hungry to make that decision. And what we are doing is trying to help them make that decision. Okay. 2019 is going to be a major paradigm shift.
It's already here.
Yes.
It's just
we're already 2019. Yeah. Hence my question, can a holistic appraisal of the Nigerian political scene be, taken somewhat so that we can look for a way forward, so that we can step away from this form of Godfatherism and start playing the real kind of politics? Is it anytime soon? Do we foresee this happening in 10 years, 20 years, or has this come to stay? I'll start with you,
It is happening already.
Well,
that paradigm shift that we've all been talking about.
that's right. I have a manifesto that I've classified under 4 A's. The first one is to educate the citizen, and that is very crucial. That is human capital development. Because honestly, the Godfatherism issue has made the thinking of people to become warped. They just follow. They're like a sheep led by, a shepherd with a staff, and they just stay here, they stay. They're like a sheep. So education will enlighten them. We're going to tell them that they have the power in their hands. Democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and it is for the people, the benefit of the people. And they have to let know the people they have elected things that they think they want changed. It's not that they will be told what to do all the time. And having empowered them, of course, education has not only the academic discipline that it gives you, it makes you innovative, it makes you creative, and it makes you invent new things. So they can think straight and listen. And then the second E is to ensure that people, creativity and innovation are helped by putting infrastructure in place that will help them. Whatever business is being carried on, you can't do it without light.
Not to interrupt you really, but this is, there are a couple parties rather that have similar agenda. And that goes back to the same question about, finding similar parties with similar ideologies and then putting your knowledge to bear in that party so you can grow and get the required. Because you said earlier during this conversation that, your party might not get that required, but you just talked about education, talked about equipping people with skills. These are some of the running thread in some parties.
I agree with you, and I've told you also when you asked me that the possibility, because you cannot remove the grip of the Godfather out of a society without having a movement that is strong and powerful and that is focused and determined. And you cannot have a movement without having people with like minds.
Do you have that movement and do you have the people?
Well, I am telling you that it is not going to be, I don't see it as an impossible thing. So there are possibilities. So, because if you really have the interests of the nation or your state at heart, and you see what is coming out of it, the level of poverty is so prevalent in Lagos State.
Across Nigeria.
I don't think it's
in Lagos State is even terrible. You have a lot of young people, some of them unschooled, some of them half schooled, and some of them graduates that have come out of schools, out of vocations that they've been taught. They're looking for jobs and they can't get. And they're hungry. And a hungry man is an angry man.
Okay, Mr. Olumide Jones, how do we intend, or how do you think we can step away from this phenomenon of Godfatherism? How soon? What do we need to do ASAP, if there is an ASAP? You know what I mean? Can it be soon? Or is it something that we have to walk our way through, maybe
or
20
find a way to dine with the devil and still get your thing done, as one governor was able to prove in this country?
I think we're doing it already. In military warfare, when there's a war, one of the things they teach you is you fight from multiple points. You don't fight from one angle. And that's what you're finding in 2019. A lot of people are missing that fact. That is why there are 91 parties fighting from multiple fronts. But people keep saying, oh, you need to come together. You don't need to come together. It happens everywhere in the whole world. If you have 91 parties, they're not going to all be regional parties. They're going to be some sectional parties, and that's what you need to do. Fight people in your locality, take power from them. It's a military strategy. It's worked for all time. And we're there already.
Military in a democratic setting.
Yep.
Interesting conversation we've been having with the Princess Adebisi Ogunsanya, Lagos gubernatorial candidate for YPP, and of course Mr. Olumide Jones, he is a senatorial candidate under the ANRP, that's the Abundant Nigerian Renewal Party, and he's running for the Ogun Central Senatorial District.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this question. I actually had it penned down, but for some reason, I think we've skirted around it, but I don't think we've actually focused on it. How true is the assertion that political godfatherism has worsened socio-economic conditions for the Nigerians, taking away rights, that's freedom of citizens to, choose who they want, and widening the gap between the rich and the poor, and made even unemployment. I mean, this is a lot of accusation, but is it true that they have a role to play in all of this?
Oh yes, certainly they have, because they pick their puppets by ignoring the intellectuals, people who have ideas, people who could make, a good contribution, people who could work with an open mind. They will be ignored. And of course, they will pick their puppets, who will just do their will, who will listen to them, who will take their dictates.
Does it mean that these godfathers don't have any sense of nationalism in them, like a sense of... Because if we go by what history is, the Zigs and the Awolowos, they had proteges who they don't expect gifts from them in bags of dollars.
They were more like mentoring them.
Services. They wanted to see what you were able to achieve from the opportunities that they've given to you. So is it not possible that some of these godfathers are, I'm not trying to speak for them, maybe they are misunderstood?
No,
I
really,
don't think so.
If I could take that. Let me tell you what's going on.
I don't think so.
In the days
They
of
are
the
the mafias. Those are their system. They are the mafias of our time.
So there is nothing they can do that would positively impact this country, except maybe we put them in a room like they've done in some countries.
Absolutely not. In the days of the Zik you were talking about, what happened was we had a common enemy, the British. We were going to England to take power. They trained us, they brought us back home. The Awolows, the Ziks, they all trained abroad. They came back home. We all had a common enemy. Now we don't have a common enemy. Now we have the godfathers. We need to turn them to be the common enemy. What's happening in some states, my states for example, you can imagine a governor deciding in a party that I'm going to buy the forms and only I will give you forms. You can't buy forms to contest in your own primaries. That is the influence of a godfather. Only a few people were able to say, look, you know what? I can afford the form myself. I'll go to Abuja and buy the forms.
So if you can afford it, now let's go to you now that's spending a whole lot of money. When you get into power, are you not going to look for a way to recoup your...
Not necessarily. Look,
No, not necessarily meaning you might.
Hold on. What I'm saying is, there are certain rules that people don't keep to.
Okay.
One of the rules is, as a senatorial candidate, you are not allowed to spend more than 40 million. A day after election, you are supposed to present an audited account to INEC. Nobody obeys those rules. And one of the things we're trying to say is, look, there are rules. Let's play by the rules.
Are you going to obey that rule? Are you going to?
We are doing that. We are doing that.
Well, you know, some people would say because you're not spending as much as the big parties, so it would be easy for you to show your books. You know, it's very easy to play by the book with INEC. But if you were running, if you were playing with the big boys, would you?
You don't need to spend all that money. It's another form of fraud. I'll tell you that for free. Because what they're doing, in my state, for example, somebody decides to buy 20 buses at the rate of 50 million each. Where did they get the money from? Are we asking the right questions? Is somebody going to be picked up by EFCC a day after election? You never know.
I guess at this point we'll have to say thank you very much for coming on the program today. Adebisi Ogunsanya, the Lagos gubernatorial candidate for YPP, and of course Olumide Jones, who is the senatorial candidate for ANRP. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We'll take a break now, and when we come back, we'll continue with Nigeria Decides Countdown.
Stay with us.